Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Fran. In this channel, I share knowledge and practical techniques on trauma healing and mental health conditions like eating disorder, bipolar disorder, depression, and anxiety. I hope by telling my very own stories that you will feel somehow connected and seen and inspired to keep faith because change and healing are possible. In this video, I wanted to talk about one topic I think a lot of people have doubts about, which is how to stop binge eating at night. As a 15 years bulimic, I think I'm more than qualified to talk about this topic because basically I've tried out all those hacky ways, the tips on how to stop binge eating at night, but none of that touched the roots of binge eating. So this video is not going to be one of those hacky videos to tell you to use tricks on how to stop binge eating, but I wanted you to really follow me through this process, and you will find out that it does not just stop you from binge eating at night. It prepares you whenever the urges of binge eating rises, because you will have the mental capacity, you will have this ability to resolve the feelings, resolve the traumas behind it, and it's going to stop you from binge eating once and for all. So I'm going to start by introducing my own story and by showing the full process of how the urges rise up, how I detect it, process it, approach those emotions directly, and later the urges just disappear. It was late at night. Actually, during a therapy session, I was on the call with my therapist. In the middle of the session, I started to have those urges for binge eating. So I told my therapist I wanted to order a delivery. I wanted to eat this and I wanted to eat that. So she actually detected that it was one of the unusual urges for binge eating because she has been working with me for years on this matter. And so she asked me, did you eat dinner? Like, how long ago did you eat it? And I told her it was 30 minutes ago, and I actually felt full. I wasn't hungry, but I just wanted to really eat something, and I couldn't stop thinking about food. She knew that I started to have these urges because there's something deep down that worth discovering. So she talked me through it. She was like, well, what are you feeling under those urges? What are your body sensations? Can you just put away your menu and just focus on your sensations? What are you thinking, and what things you haven't been processing today? What happened today that might have triggered your feelings or uncomfortable sensations in your body? So I was pretty anxious, but I listened to her and I tried to lean into my body and feel. There was just this tight sensation in front of my chest, and I was pretty anxious. I don't want to close my eyes and sit still. I wanted to just get up and look at the menus and look at everything I wanted to eat, and I just couldn't stop thinking about the food. She told me to not do any of that because they were distractions for getting deeper into my own sensations. I was trying to avoid those sensations by ordering food. And she asked me to recall the events that I've gone through and recall any images possible that has shown up in front of my eyes. And I started to go back to the first time when I started to binge eat. It was actually at home when I was probably 11 or 12 years old. It was normally after dinner time. Everybody of my family has this tradition to sit in front of the television and watch and spend family time together. But I hated it because they do all the yelling. They would potentially criticize me if I expose myself to them anywhere. Even during the time of watching television with them, they would always drag those conversations and detour them back to me and say something bad about me. You know, why can't you be like the person in the TV? Why can't you act the way that they do? And they just could always find excuses and always find anything to attack me. So I was extremely anxious when I was faced with those angry yelling, because as a child I couldn't stand with that feeling. So faced with the anxiety and faced with the fear, I had to constantly get up to do something. And that time I came up with the perfect distraction, which is to look for food. I could just go to the kitchen and get some food. I could go to my bedroom and get some food. I could go to look for food in different rooms, in different closets, and that's a perfect excuse for me to not stay present with my family members because they scare me. So it actually makes sense, because every time I feel this anxiety feeling that I feel something just got stuck in my chest, I couldn't really take deep breaths to relax. It was the same feeling. So we stayed in the memory for about 45 minutes. To a point, I just started weeping. I started crying so bad because I never let those emotions out, because if I tell people that I don't want to be with my family, I don't really enjoy the time being with my family members, that makes me really like a bad person, because who doesn't like spending time with their family? So in order to protect myself, I hid all of those secrets from everybody until recent years when I started to open up more to a therapist. What surprised me the most is that I actually got triggered that day earlier at work. My leader subtly criticized me or hinted that I wasn't doing a very good job with one project. So the thing with authority figures is that how we deal with authorities in our life currently is the direct reflection of the original authority, which is our parent figures like mom and dad, or grandma, grandparents, and everyone who was the first caregivers. When I got this perceived criticism from work, it triggered my memory of being criticized by my family members when I was 12 years old. And that kind of anxiety, helplessness, powerlessness, fear, all got stirred up with unresolved traumas. So the only thing I could do is to repeat the pattern of distraction at that time, which is to look for food, to soothe this anxiety, to soothe this uncomfortable sensation within my body, because I perceived my body to not be safe here. The magic moment happened because after the 1 hour session of therapy, I actually don't feel the urge to binge eat anymore, because the energies behind the urges to binge eat have been dissipated, have been seen, have been released. So now I'm going to introduce specific steps on how to overcome the urges for binge eating at night. The first step is to notice when the urge of binge eating rises. I think the hardest thing for a binge eater to do is to distinguish if they're actually hungry or just craving for food because they have to run away from their emotions. They have things like feelings to process. They're using food as distraction. I think there's a really blurred line between those things, because for binge eating, their hunger cues are almost very messed up. Like they don't really have this accurate body signals to tell them, well, you're actually hungry, you're actually bored, or you're actually sad, you're actually upset or anxious. You just wanted to use food to cope with that. There's a very blurred line for them to know. So for this, I wanted you to watch the videos. I'm going to put it here, but it actually teaches you to cultivate the habit of healthy eating so that you can actually build up this reliable body signals to tell you if you're actually hungry or you're just feeling like binge eating. So I think that's a very important step. You have to distinguish those things first. If you ended up discovering that you're actually very hungry, go eat something. But if you discover that you're not that hungry, but you just don't feel very well and you're trying to run the food for help, you're trying to run the food for distraction or entertainment, and that's the time you should continue working through this process. And second thing is, once you've discovered that you have this urges for binge eating, I want you to find a place just to be with yourself. I don't care if you're at your home or if you're outside. If you're in a social event, if you're somewhere that you find it hard to be by yourself, just go to the bathroom, take a deep breath. If you're at home, that's the ideal place because you could go to your bedroom and not being disturbed by people. And I want you to sit with yourself to really explore what's going on in your body. You can describe it in shapes, in color, and in texture, in whatever that you're feeling inside of your body. For example, for me, the most common feeling is that I feel like there's something just got clogged here, and I felt like I couldn't breathe really deeply, and this anxiety just kept me floating. I couldn't be grounded, and I feel like my visions are looking outside, anywhere else, just not centered here, and I have to find words to describe this feeling. And then once you have described the feeling, you have actually built more connections with your body. Then the third step is to ask yourself, what's the last time that you got this feeling? And what's the first time you got this feeling? The same exact sensation. Asking yourself what is the recent thing that happened made you feel this way is reminding you of the trigger, maybe for that day, maybe for a couple of days before, that you aren't able to fully process. For example, for me, that day I got criticized by my boss, right? And he actually stands for authority. And his criticism means potential rejection, means potential abandonment, because he could have just fired me, right? If I'm not doing my job very well. So that triggered my anxiety of abandonment. That triggered my anxiety of not feeling good enough when I'm in front of my parents, when I'm in front of my family members. Asking myself about the earliest memory of the same sensation is taking me back to the very first time I learned to use food to cope with whatever uncomfortable feeling that I was feeling at that time. That's the first time I learned to use food as coping mechanism. At that time, food was the only friend that I've got. So I actually used it to make me survive that terrible time. I suppressed a hell lot of feelings. For example, I was suppressing my fear of inferior. I was trying to suppress the shame that I'm not good enough, so I induced this criticism. I suppressed my helplessness. I suppressed my anger. I suppressed my fear. I suppressed all that feeling. But if I'm not able to healthily release all of them, there's always like a tumor inside of my brain that haven't been removed. It's gonna go explosive every time it gets triggered. To remove the tumor, I need to take the child back to the original scene. I need to re-narrate the whole thing to her. I need to provide this positive, safe, supportive environment for her to express whatever she's feeling, so that she could find strength for her to go through the same exact thing, to maybe have a different perspective on looking at those things. Maybe she could tell herself now that it's not my problem, that they are insecure, they are explosive, they don't know how to be good parents, they don't know how to be good family members. It's not my fault, it has nothing to do with me. Until then, she wouldn't be able to, she wouldn't have the strength to deal with the sensations in her body, because it's unsafe, right? Because it's horrifying to go through those sensations by herself. Until then, she wouldn't be able to release those emotions. She wouldn't be able to heal that part of herself. And she wouldn't learn new ways, new healthy ways of coping those emotions instead of binge eating. So I want you to follow through this process, just as I did with my therapist. Do it over and over again, because there could be a lot of triggers for binge eating. For example, for me alone, I have discovered a whole list of the things that trigger my binge eating. For example, if I go through abandonment anxiety, if I go through separation, if I go through fear, if I go through the shame that I'm not good enough, if I go through criticism, if I go through rejection, if I go through boredom even, I use food to cope. So every time when I have this triggered urge to binge eat, I would really sit with myself to discover like which part of myself is calling for help, which part of me is calling for healing. And that is the single most powerful process that helped me overcome my binge eating for past 15 years. Alright my friends, I hope this video really helps. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you wanted to see more videos like this, please subscribe. And I will see you next time. Bye bye.